There's more to school security than technology and policy, so we're going to try to make sense out of it. First, we need to know how to think about security. In other words, identifying what we have of value that needs to be protected and what the risks to that might be. In part 2, we'll talk about planning school security and implementing it. So here's a school. This is one in a suburb of Shanghai. It's close to a school that I visited. Notice that there's a gatehouse. It's a gated entrance. Students and faculty have to walk through that gate where their foreheads are scanned for temperature, so that they protect not only the physical health but the mental health, the medical health of their students. And of course, they need to protect student records, academic, medical, and psychological. But when you think of value, often you think of money, of gold. Like what in the U.S. protects our gold? Well, you might think of Fort Knox, Kentucky, which is the U.S. gold depository, whose basement holds billions of dollars of gold bullion. But is there something of monetary value that schools need to protect? Well, also in Kentucky, the Scott County School District discovered that they lost nearly $4 million to cyber fraud by paying fraudulent purchase orders. This turns out to be a common cyber attack. So there were 4,000 such successful cyber attacks, but against U.S. financial firms, they're the ones that have the money. These would be banks, insurance companies, and so on, just in half of a year. Successful attacks means that they got the money. These cyber attacks also compromised data, so you should assume that your credit card information, that your social security number, home address, phone number, all of that sort of thing has been compromised over these attacks against 5 billion accounts. MasterCard alone detects nearly 500,000 attacks per day. So there's another way that schools can lose money, which is called ransomware. And this has attacked cities such as Atlanta, Georgia, New Orleans. It shut down their city governments for weeks. So ransomware is like a virus that once it gets into a computer, it does two things. First, it encrypts all of the files in that computer, so that the user of that computer tries to open a Word document or an Excel file and can't open it. It's encrypted. The second thing that the virus does is it transmits the virus over the network to other computers. It does that extraordinarily quickly and well. It's very hard to protect against. Why? Some of the best programmers in the world created that because they work for the U.S. National Security Agency, our NSA, our top security agency, who themselves were hacked. And some of their strongest attack software was stolen and is now on the web for anybody to buy. And it is now used to attack us. Wow. So it takes millions of dollars to recover from a ransomware attack. They say if you don't pay the ransom, your files will be deleted or the data that you have will be exposed to the world. If you pay the ransom, maybe you'll get a code that will decrypt your files. Maybe. How responsible are the governments for this? Well, the city of New Orleans, years before they were hacked, had a technology audit which discovered over 1,000 security vulnerabilities, when most of them were unaddressed for years after they learned about them, because administrations and boards tend not to have security as a very high priority. How about schools? Does ransomware hit schools? Well, ask Oklahoma City. So in 1999, they were attacked just like the cities. They were out of action for weeks. Even something as basic as email was simply inaccessible to all employees of the school district. So you may be wondering, why schools and municipalities? It turns out that they're the top target for ransomware because they are data rich. Businesses are money rich. They are terrified of ransomware. They think it's their greatest threat. They lose billions of dollars. So most of the breached records that are sold on the internet come from cities, schools, and hospital break-ins, because those are like a city government has data on every city citizen. A school has data on every kid in the city, and so on. These are extraordinarily difficult to prevent. But the defense to get your system back up and running is frequent backups, like nightly at a minimum, and a recovery plan that can be put into action the moment you know that you have been hacked. Not if you've been hacked, but when you've been hacked. So there are many things of value that need to be protected. Toward the end of May 2019, there were crowds marching in the streets across the United States protesting the brutal police murder of Minneapolis citizen, black man, George Floyd, completely innocent. And the marchers had a physical message to shout out and to have signage about, but there was also a message distributed by social justice websites such as Black Lives Matter. There's also a website from the Minneapolis police, whose police department murdered Mr. Floyd. But these two websites had something in common during these demonstrations. They were both viciously attacked through distributed denial of service attacks, DDoS. Denial of service attacks means they're not trying to destroy the data or get money. What they want to do is make your message or your website inaccessible to the people who need to or want to access it. So you can see from the blue graph, through most of May, web access was just sort of baseline for Black Lives Matter. And then for about 3 days during the initial protests, the website was hit with 40 million web requests. Now, the purpose of that is to overload it and either crash it or make it so busy it can't respond to normal people who want to access it. At its peak, it got 20,000 web requests per second, more than it could possibly respond to. A similar attack from a different group was aimed at the Minneapolis Police Department. Fortunately, there's another commonality between the two websites. They're both protected by services like Cloudflare and CrowdStrike, who are designed to protect against distributed denial of service attacks. As soon as they notice an attack coming in progress, they find the IP addresses from which the attack is launched and they block those in the firewall. But it's a distributed attack, meaning the attack is coming from hundreds or thousands of computers simultaneously. So it takes a pro to control. This isn't the end of the story. The mask here is the symbol of the white hat hacker group Anonymous. They say they're going to hack the Minneapolis Police Department website if the police department doesn't shape up. And they'll do that to expose some of the previous misdeeds of the department. Wow. Clearly there's a breakdown in culture here of trust between different parts of our society. But the foundation of security is not technology and police and policies. It's truth, it's trust, it's honesty, it's constituents' faith in their government, and government's faith in the honesty and good hearts of their citizens. That was challenged in the 2000 presidential election, when poorly designed paper ballots in Florida essentially flipped the election. The Congress was so incensed at this that they said, oh, we want to end insecure paper ballots. We want to create a secure electronic modern voting system for the nation. So they appropriated millions of dollars for communities to purchase electronic voting systems like this. So they felt that, good. Now our voting system is safer, it's secure, we can rest, eat. Oh, could voting systems be hacked? Well, it turns out that even though apparently investigations have shown that apparently no election has been altered by the hacked voting machines or by voting machine errors, it turns out that all of them are hackable. A bunch of them of the most popular machines were brought to a security conference, and the security professionals and their friends got a chance to try to hack them, and they were able to do that. So you'd think, well, it has to be a security professional, somebody who's highly skilled and maybe has money behind them, like a government or a criminal group. But gee, it turned out to be pretty easy. So in one case, an 11-year-old hacked one of the voting machines in 10 minutes. The 11-year-old found programming errors that no decent programmer should ever make, and certainly a device shouldn't ship with those errors. But they did. Wow. To give you an idea of the competence of the companies that produced these, Diebold used to have a good reputation. They made ATM machines. But here's a headline. They finally admit that their voting machines can't count. A given voting machine during a day typically records 100 or a few hundred votes. But it dropped some of them. And the system has no way of knowing how many it dropped because there's no paper trail, there's no secure record of who voted and what votes were cast for. Wow. So the state of Ohio, for example, lost hundreds or thousands of votes in one election. And because of the design of the system, they have no idea who those votes would have been for, or even whose votes they were. Wow. The Secretary of State in Ohio is furious about this, trying to recover it, and recommending that the state legislature go back to paper ballots for security. In fact, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is recommending the same thing, that our electronic systems are not secure. We should go back to paper. A further sad note is that there was a congressional hearing to find out about the root of this problem. One of the programmers from one of the companies was testified under oath, and he reported that his supervisor required that he program what's called a backdoor into the electronic voting systems. That means that over the internet, somebody outside of the voting system would be able to access the core programming and data in the electronic voting machine without anyone else knowing about it. Wow. And you'd think, well, of course, there must be a federal group that blesses the voting machines, that tests them, tests their security and accuracy. But no, there is no such system federally. This is all a local community system. Wow. So let's get down to earth, something closer to home. Your home, maybe you don't live in a stone castle like this, but your home is probably protected by a sturdy front door with a nice pin tumbler key lock. The same thing has been protecting doors for the past 1,000 years. If you get a brand new home, this is the kind of lock that's installed. And it's a nice shiny lock put in by a good company. But maybe you don't know about the bump key. This $4 key can open any lock of that design. A given builder that builds all the homes in a development, let's say 25 homes, uses the same kind of lock. That one bump key can open any of the locks. A different community made by a different builder, well, then you get the $20 5-key set that will open Kwikset, Yale, Slage, and other common locks. You think, well, this has to be illegal, and that can't be easy to use, can it?
So these are bump keys that we just ordered online. Cost us $50 for this whole set. There we go.
You saw that in real time. It took a matter of seconds.
What do you guys think about this?
That took exactly 5 seconds to open that door in a way that does not damage the lock. It doesn't leave a trace. There's no way for anyone to know that that lock has been illegally opened. The home entered. The lock can be locked when an intruder exits in the same way, leaving absolutely no trace. Now, have you heard of bump keys? Whose responsibility is it to promote the safety of your home, the safety of your community? Do the police have a role in that? Does your home insurance company have a role in that? Why don't they make this clear? There is a large group of people who know about this, the people who've been to jail or prison. That's crime school. They know all about bump keys, that for $5 or $20, they can get exactly what they need to enter homes, most of the homes in a community. Wow. So, our little Latin phrase up there, translated from the ancient Roman, is who watches the watchers? And see you again in part 2.